I'm Chad.Taylor, psychotherapist, author of It's You, Oh Fuck It's Me. No tips, no fixing, just real conversations. So today I've got Renee, and I actually studied with Renee back when I was becoming a therapist. So Renee, who the fuck are you?
I'm me. um, who the fuck am I is a wonderful question to ask because I think that changes in every day, in every moment as I learn more about myself and get deeper into who the fuck I am because there's a bunch of fucks, right? And how many do you give? But I guess if you want to know on a story level, yeah. In this
Yeah,
physical world, I happen to be Renee Baloo. I studied psychotherapy, holistic counseling with you a number of years ago. I gone on to do my master's, and I'm in this point of transition of how that actually is going to be used in my life because I'm not a clinician. I'm much more of a creative. So I have spent many, many years of my life teaching the practice of weaving as a therapeutic modality where I sit with women in circle, not just women, but it seems women get drawn to this work where we learn how to weave and it opens up this container where we can tap into the wisdom that's inherent in this metaphor that comes through weave and then embrace that in the present moment to speak about things that are present for us and allow the weave to inform that so that we are safely nurtured and held in this sacred container. Yeah, so it's kind of group work.
what do you
Um,
think it is? Quickly, what do you think it is about the weaving?
What really fascinates me is that it's like straight from nature. So it's this transmutation of what's out there in the natural world, which is a creative process in itself. Yeah, it's been created through the creative energy of the universe. Then it's come into our hands. We've transformed it into a material that we can actually use to create something that's utilitarian, practical, or aesthetic. And so there's this whole cycle of tapping into this creative energy. And it's that creative energy that I'm really interested in. So, weaving being one of the most ancient art forms. Um,
So the weaving's probably the product you finish with, right? From what I'm hearing, is it's a byproduct of the experience of sitting down and doing the weaving. Would I be right in saying that?
well, yes, but also paradoxically, no, because, there is no hierarchy in it.
Mm.
So it's just as important as the process itself because there's an energetic that's embedded in that can be tapped into like a memory, So like talismanic objects have energy, they have soul, and you've created that soul into being through the process. So, it depends on your intentionality, but it can really be something that takes you right back to that learning and in a safe and a nurturing way, you can access that back again and deepen it further down the line in the process. So the process certainly has a really deep impact, but that doesn't take away from the actual practical results of it.
Exciting. I'm going to
Yeah.
have a look more into it. Like you said, you studied psychotherapy, and so do you do a little bit of clinical work? And from memory, that you also do a few trips into Middle Australia and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got private clients that I work with psychotherapeutically and as a spiritual mentor. Which taps very much into the depth of what I share through the weaving, because it's very much on a metaphysical level.
Mm.
But weaving is a connector, so it's connecting all layers of being and making sense of what is present, like the rightness of what is, which is what process works about, like finding out the rightness of what exists in life and then embracing that. And then what I do is take that a step further and weave it in on every level. So then the weaving itself goes further because taking people up to adopted family members of mine up in Arnhem Land, where really a deep part of my heart lies, and immersing ourselves into that landscape in this way of being that reflects the rightness of life and reflects a way of walking that comes through observing and stepping into life in that way. And in a way, it's a way of discovering self or parts of self that never were able to be present because of the environment. And so tapping into that different environment that embraces the weave on such a deep level, and then walking with it in this new way, with new worldview, new way of looking, and seeing what works for us and what doesn't, and having the
Exciting.
opportunity then to weave in what works.
I
And
like that.
taking home a talisman that reminds you of that when you forget.
So, if anyone out there listening to this, it sounds like something that's up their alley. Where can they find you? Have you got a website, or what? Where can people find Renee?
I'm very present on Facebook at Renee Ballou with my personal page, but Weavery is my business name. So weavery.com.au, although my website needs updating
It's okay.
in the
I'll
mess
get
of
you to.
life. But also my Facebook page is Weavery. So
Okay,
that's easy
and
to.
I'll get you to send me some stuff over, and I'll put it in
Oh,
the show
yeah, cool.
notes. So for anybody that is listening that
Yeah,
thinks they'd like to go on one of Renee's journeys, just
yeah,
reach out to
yeah,
Renee directly. So what
yeah,
I've got a thing that I'm doing on this podcast as it
yeah.
flows through and process that. So the last guest leaves something for the next guest,
Mm,
and I seem to be flowing through two podcasts, two guests, and then I do a
yeah,
solo episode. So unfortunately,
yeah.
or fortunately, the last guest was me. It was a solo,
Ah,
and
right.
I left the question:
Yeah.
what would collapse if you stopped being right?
For one, my perception that I was right.
Right.
Yeah, like I think a lot of ego shedding would happen
Yep.
and the emergence of humility or the remembrance of humility. I think that part of me that I really like is that I'm actually okay with not being right because I really like finding these things that I haven't noticed, right?
Right.
Because I think I'm right a lot of the time. But
I had no idea who was coming on the podcast when I
uh-huh.
wrote that question down or spoke it out
Oh,
at the end of the last podcast. But I think
ah,
this question is really suited to you universally because I think you're somebody who can speak to
yeah,
going deeper than being right, going deeper than that egocentricity of who I
yeah,
think I am. Who am I behind being a weaver, behind being a therapist, behind
yeah,
being.
I know, right? Yeah, and I find that this is an interesting one because part of this identity, when you say, oh, being a weaver, being this person, I just did this massive project bringing an Indigenous woman from Arnhem Land and a Bushman woman from the Kalahari together and me and presented this cultural experience where I was right in the middle of it, you know, and there's an identity in that. And people go, wow, you're doing such amazing work. And, when it's done, it's like it never happened. And I'm like, I don't even know who I am right now because that's not present, you know? So there's a part of me that actually like gets validation from hearing from others, this beautiful work that I do. But then there's me that goes, well, who the fuck are you anyway? Because in those moments where that's not present and the validation is like faded into the social media distance, like 2 days afterwards,
Yep.
then who am I? Because do I gain my sense of validation or my sense of who I am from the validation of those around me? Or what is it that holds the meanness of me? And so, coming back to that question of like, what would happen if what seemed to be right was shown up wasn't right? I think that we need these things. I certainly do. I need to be challenged by these questions because when I'm asking the question of myself, well, who the hell am I beyond what I do in the world and how I perceive myself to be? Like, only then do the answers start to show themselves. And part of my identity is that I do have this worldview and this choice of life practice that is like, I don't want to follow the norm of Western culture. I don't want to be a clinician because I'd have to go in and work according to somebody else's schedule, even if it is, you know, something that brings me back money or brings me back things that have bring comfort. I would much prefer to walk with the universe unfolding. Like I did my master's, not because I had an end result in mind, but because I felt like that was the message that I was reading that I needed to follow. Yeah. But
Mm.
and I value that way of life. It feels more authentic. It feels more following this creation process where there's no predetermined outcome, but I let go to the wisdom of what is present and follow that. It's like riding the horse backwards, right? But even that, there is an identity in that. So when I sit like I am in the moment, part of me feels it's like it's an identity crisis that leads me to procrastinating and not knowing what's showing itself next. These questions, when I go, what is the rightness in that, helps me to then find my grounding again in the depth of who I am and what it is that I hold most valuable in life. Is it about this outside story where I'm earning a decent income or not? Or is it about the freedom that that brings me? Or is it about the flexibility that I have to give to my family? Where, I'm always available for my daughters who now, I'm just like empty nesting. I'm not ready. She's still here, but she's finished school last year. So there's all these unknowns. So it helps me to know that even the rightness of what I thought was being, that guidance force leading my life is even in question because there's a gem there waiting to be unfolded. And that beginner's mind where you're able to receive the fact that you're not right, do you know? Like that then opens up, like this is a trusting that for that to happen. It's like having to trust that that will unfold, do you know, will lead me to a depth that I seek that is more than what I can imagine in this moment, and there's a discomfort in that because there's like, well, I don't know that that's even right. So even that question's like what's the rightness of anything? Yeah. And when does it begin and end?
I do think that we need more people like you with master's degrees in places like this to change the system, right? Like the best place to change a system is from within inside of it. So maybe
Yeah.
your journey, and we'll skip over this now, but maybe part of your
Yep.
journey is to, I'm pretty sure both Jesus and the Dalai Lama talked about, learn the rules well so you know how to break them, that to dismantle structure needs to almost be dismantled from the inside. So I think the more people like you and I, the rule breakers of the world that we all went to uni with, I think the more of us alternatives that can come into a system that's got such structure and
Yeah.
dismantle it from the inside. And I know for me, it was my supervisor used to, her biggest worry at the start was that I wore a hat and didn't wear a collar to work, and I didn't wear shoes to the
Yep.
therapy office. I wear them in winter because I'm cold, but I
Yep.
don't have any on now, and I haven't had any on. I don't have work clothes and home clothes. I have clothes, and it doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether I'm going to the office or to the beach because
Yeah. Totally.
I want to be me. I guess leading into the book, I sent you a copy of my book. What do you
Yep.
think stood out from the book for you? What's a few little things, any sort of concept that stood
I
out?
mean, what really stood out for me is this, like the value of being real, you know? Like, and it doesn't matter what that real looks like. Like, I mean, your way might be, like what the fuck, blah, 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 and I say blah, 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 not to be blasé, but
Mm.
there's kind of like the blah, blah, blah also goes around like, so why do I have to wear like proper clothes when I'm in a therapy office? I mean, like it's about realness, and realness is for me is about being 100% relational, not only with everything around us, but with everything inside us,
Mm.
you know? And once we can be attuned to that relationality and that realness, then we can share that outwards. And through the practice of attunement, that we will be drawing people then that recognize that and that vibe with that. And that, and I actually think that this is what the world needs because we're sitting so much in a space of rules, increasing rules, that
Mm.
we've forgotten what's real,
Mm.
you know? And because rules are defined by what's right and wrong, or like if you don't follow the rule, you're wrong, and the right way is to follow the rule. And then there's punishment if you don't in some way or another, overt or not. Like we begin to have this inner sense of restriction of self. Yeah.
And that's the basis of relationships. That
it is.
in the book, if we can see that two people meet,
yeah,
and they can be their authentic self.
Yeah.
This is something that I realized in the last probably 10 years of my life, that when I met my partner, Sophie, it's like she's not a project, right? I'm not there looking, oh, yeah, she's this person, and with a bit of love, she could be a really great person. It's like if I couldn't stay with this woman exactly how she is now without needing to mold her and like a piece of clay or a project, or if I can't do that, then what the fuck am I doing? But I see this day in, day out in therapy. The people around us get the worst of us.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of therapists who need fucking therapy.
Oh, I mean, I think most therapists go into studying therapy because they need it themselves. And then they go on to share in whichever way they do, to whichever degree of healing they've experienced. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I do agree that that is quite common, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to teach from practice. However,
as long as you're on the other side of it or moving towards it. I love the analogy of we've fallen into a hole and we know the way out, right? And we can help another client get out. But I'm falling into multiple holes all the fucking time, right?
And I think there's such a beauty in that, because process work specifically allows us, not just allows us, but like promotes that as a practice, promotes realness as a practice, not rule following. So we're not going to be then projecting rules onto the people we sit with. We're going to be watching what's present and watching it with compassion and love and amazement and going, wow, that's so interesting that, this is coming up for you, because it's coming up for me too. And I can admit the things where I'm wrong. And that's going to actually enhance the process of realness that's unfolding together for us to uncover what's actually really speaking through this.
And that probably leads into my next question, which is it's a tough one because it's a personal one. What does unconsciousness cost you in your relationships throughout your life? What do you think unconsciousness has cost you? Professional, friends, intimate?
Yeah. I mean, well, there's a thing about awareness. Yeah. And so like my marriage broke up 13 years ago. And I mean, there's a lot of things at play in that. And, not to say that it was a perfect pairing in the first place, but for one, my unconsciousness allowed me to step into that and gloss over things that would have shown themselves up if I had had this knowledge already. And then within and throughout the relationship, I still had that way where after the relationship broke up, suddenly I was thrown into this space where I just needed to learn and wanted to learn and go, what was my responsibility in that I didn't follow up? And lots of it was about honoring self, honoring self, which is for me now a major thing. It's like, what does that look like? What does it look like to honor yourself? Not just honoring others, but honoring self within the benevolence to others, as a priority. So, like,
I love to hear that, because what I see a lot at the moment is I see people making a business model almost off being a victim. And I'm a narcissistic recovery coach, and I can almost get on Instagram and bleed my heart out about what the narcissist did to me and 5 ways to recover from narcissistic abuse and all this, pointing the finger. Meanwhile, I'm a guy with big tattoos and I'm clearly on steroids. And it's almost like my joke in the comments is, this reminds me a bit of the skit Who's on First. It's almost like, oh, is it a window or is it a mirror? And I think the whole of life is exactly what you just said then. It's refreshing to hear somebody say, because I'm the same as you, I haven't been that great in relationships up until now. And it's easy to want to talk about what they did wrong. But when we start to talk about what we may have, not wrong even, what we
even chose them in the first place. And just what you said, it's like, why would I choose somebody if I thought they had potential and I wanted to change them, and I know that love will change everything? No, What's actually present right now in this moment, and who am I choosing to be within this? You know, like, do I need them to complete me? Right? Can I allow them to be exactly who they are, knowing that I am complete already? I am already in the space where I know I can honor myself and do.
I love to hear that. And because these are pretty short, I kind of on purpose almost just like call time out. But we're at that point where I'm going to ask you if generally the previous guest will leave something for the next guest, okay? It's either a sentence, a question, a statement, no teaching, just one line. And I usually put this on people without telling them. Just what do you want to leave the next guest, Renee?
I guess I would. What I'm most curious about is it's something about the present moment. So, like, how do people experience the present moment and embrace it as a guidance force in honoring self?
Okay. So how do you embrace the present moment?
I'm still trying to formulate it, right? So I'm thinking, you notice I'm looking all over the place. Oh, wow, process work going wild, right? And I'm looking out at the trees and I'm like asking, what is it about this question that really has impact for me? But I guess it's for me, like, what question do I ask myself the most? What question would you most often ask yourself if your consideration was self-honoring?
What question would you most often ask yourself if your consideration was self-honouring? And that's where we'll leave it.